Hi everybody, Melanie here and welcome back to my channel. Right, today I'm talking about quiet borderline types. I want to start this video by saying that BPD lies on a spectrum. It's a sliding scale, so people can be exhibiting just traits of it, people can have full-blown BPD, and people can be exhibiting traits that are different to other people who are also on the BPD spectrum. Now, this is important to remember, which brings me on to why we're talking about quiet borderline types. So the reason that they're called quiet borderlines is because they're not displaying the overt anger that is often so typically associated with BPD, as well as NPD. Someone who's a quiet borderline will appear as introverted, fragile, on the outskirts, a bit of a loner, maybe quite aloof. And if you've come from a background of dating someone who was very angry, someone who was an overt narcissist, someone who was quite malicious and quite predatory, then it's easy to understand why you come across someone who's a quiet borderline and they're not giving you the same warning flags as your exes. In fact, this person seems quite approachable and you feel compelled to want to spend time with this person. And when you start to get to know someone who's a quiet borderline, there's the feeling of wanting to help and to really be there for this person and make them feel better because you feel so sympathetic to them. And this is actually the biggest warning sign when you are involved with someone who is a quiet borderline type. The feeling of feeling compelled to want to make everything better for this person. You feel compelled to want to look after them, to make them happy, perhaps even rescue them. But this person isn't necessarily wanting to be rescued. Someone who is a quiet borderline is quiet in the sense that they are not typically a very angry person. You can't really sense that the anger is just below the surface, as you often see with people who have anger issues. With someone who's a quiet borderline, the anger's not a part of them. They don't consider themselves angry people. In fact, they consider themselves quite easygoing, chilled out people. The reason why that they're not so typically angry is that they disown the anger. The anger's not a part of them. Sometimes the anger is totally dissociated from the quiet borderline, or sometimes the anger is turned inwards, which results in depression. So remember, with BPD, as well as NPD, is that these are trauma responses. Children who develop this not only have a genetic predisposition to it, but also are responding to a very hostile environment growing up as children. So more than likely, their feelings of anger would have been shamed and they would have been told that they're a bad kid. So growing up, maybe your quiet borderline friend or your quiet borderline partner feels ashamed of being bad. She doesn't want to be seen as bad. She wants to be seen as good. As I said in previous videos, that young children, see their parents as gods. They believe what their parents say. They look up to parents. So when a parent is shunning the child, telling the child off, saying you're wrong, you're bad, the kid believes it. When the parents are treating the child in a certain way, through neglect, through criticism, excessive criticism, pointing and laughing, ignoring, neglect, child will interpret this as, I'm the reason that mummy or daddy is treating me this way. It's because I'm a bad kid. Therefore, I need to be a good kid so that I can be loved, so that I can be unconditionally loved and feel part of the family again. So when the quiet borderline grows up, he or she just wants to be seen as good so that the inner child in them can finally feel loved again, can feel safe, can feel secure. So for a quiet female borderline, for example, she won't want to be seen as bad, so she won't be angry. Being angry is a bad thing. After all, society tells us that we shouldn't be angry. Perhaps her parents blamed her, shamed her, ignored her, neglected her, didn't know how to handle her anger. And as such, she's grown up now feeling dissociated from her anger. She sees anger as not a good thing. So this goes into her shadow, and the shadow goes in the back of her mind in the unconscious, so no, I want to be seen as good. And I often saw this in the New Age community, by the way. A lot of people that just don't want to acknowledge anything that could be bad about them. Only good vibes here, no negative vibes allowed. When you see people constantly saying this, to me, it's a bit of a hint that maybe, just maybe, they haven't accepted their own shadow. They can't handle negativity from others because they haven't seen it within themselves, maybe. Just a thought. So the quiet borderline doesn't accept the anger within herself. She may displace it onto others, project it onto others. She may just completely dissociate from it. She can't handle her own anger, and she sure as hell can't handle your anger. Basically, someone who can't handle their own anger will struggle in handling your anger. They will likely become very triggered by it. They will become very defensive by it. So the problems that arise from this kind of relationship, if you are dating someone like this, if you are friends with someone like this, is that often that we don't feel like we're actually being angry, we're just giving someone a healthy challenge, and yet they interpret it as being criticized, being slighted, being attacked. And as such, they will get defensive and will not want to be involved. She'll walk away. She will ignore you. And it can be very painful if you're on the receiving end thinking, well, what did I do wrong? I didn't think I did anything wrong, and yet she's treated me like I said the worst thing in the world. But the thing is that, just like with everyone else who has BPD, is that they are very protective over themselves. They are defensive. They are all about self-preservation, and that's just how it is. They are managing trauma from the past, and as such that it's very difficult to do shadow work. And what I mean by this is to actually embrace the anger within, to actually come to terms with their own inner craziness, for example, for them to realize that they may have a problem with impulsivity. If anything, these are all just examples, by the way. People with BPD are all different and all unique, but I'm just giving some common examples of when people may struggle to want to really look at these issues deeply, to want to change. And as such, it gets pushed into the back of our mind, into the unconscious. But as Carl Jung says, what we resist persists. So our shadow will always be chasing us if we don't confront it. So ultimately, I'm making this video because I know that there are lots of people out there who are dating or have dated someone who ticks the boxes of perhaps being a quiet borderline. Maybe they have actually been diagnosed with BPD. And it's really hard to move on from these kind of relationships because often we become really good friends, and it's really painful to lose a good friend as well as losing a lover, perhaps. It's hard to let go because the feeling to want to protect, to look after, to really help this person because you sympathize with what she's going through, it doesn't really go. Even when they just suddenly leave you, the feelings just don't change like that. Not for you anyway. If you've got a friend like this, if you've dated someone like this, the heartache and the pain of separation from someone who you were so close to, and it's like they can just cut ties and just go. And it's painful because the feelings don't just disappear for you, but out of self-preservation, it's like a switch just goes off in her mind that she can do this. I make this video to try and depersonalize it a little bit, because this is a reaction to trauma. This is someone who hasn't come to terms with the pain and abuse from the past. And I'm making this video as well because often I hear clients who say that they feel massive regret over things that they've said that they think caused the partner to leave. And whilst no doubt they had a part to play in it, of course, it takes two to tango. I'm making this video to say that it may not necessarily have been exactly your words, but just the anger itself that perhaps triggered her, and she made her choices and she left. It doesn't mean that your anger was wrong. It means that she doesn't know how to handle anger. But then often we blame ourselves and we can't let the thought go. I often have clients who say, I really wish I shouldn't have said that. I regret saying this or regret doing that. Maybe she will be back with me. Maybe she wouldn't have left. Well, we don't know. We don't know. But what is very, very common with people with BPD is that they do change their minds a lot. A lot. So you don't know that if you went back in time and didn't act that way, that something else might have happened that was out of your control and the same result might have happened. You don't know this. All right, so I'll leave it there for now. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.